Hello, Pittsburgh, and welcome to Yinz Are Good, a podcast that celebrates all of the good stuff that is happening right here in our hometown of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'm your host, Tressa Glover. I am a Pittsburgh native, born and raised, actually in the North Hills of Pittsburgh, but now, wait for it, am residing in the South Hills. It is true. So I have made the trek, made the journey, crossed a bridge, through a tunnel, and I'm now in the South Hills. And here we are. This is our first episode of Yins Are Good. So let me tell you what you can expect from this podcast. So we talk about celebrating the good stuff. So we want to hear from you, fellow Pittsburghers. Tell us your stories. Tell us about a time when someone changed your life for the better. Maybe there's somebody that you want to thank for something they did for you or said to you or somehow set your life on a new course in a positive way, and you never had a chance to thank them. And maybe you want to do that via this podcast. Maybe there's some advice that you were given that you'd like to share with the rest of us, or just some advice you would like to share with the rest of us from yourself. And especially now, we're recording this first episode in July of 2020. So needless to say, these are particularly daunting times. A lot of uncertainty out there. And so let's reach out. Let's help each other out. Let's lift each other up and share the good stuff that's happening right here. And you may be wondering, Tressa, how might I do that? You are in luck. I have that information and can share it with you now. So if you want to reach out to us here, you can either give us a call on our toll-free number. It is 1-833-399-GOOD. That is 1-833-399-GOOD. And that is an automated service, and it will prompt you as needed. And then you can leave us your story or your thoughts on our voicemail, and we will play that right here on our podcast. If you prefer not to leave a voicemail and email is more your jam, then you can do that. You can email us at yinzaregood@gmail.com. That is yinzaregood@gmail.com. And all we ask is that you give us at least your first name and the neighborhood where you reside here in the Pittsburgh area. And that's it. And we're going to share these stories with each other, connect with each other, remind each other of the kindness that is out there, of the generosity that is out there, of the love that is out there. And the podcast will also include segments peppered throughout the episodes that include fun facts about Pittsburgh and its neighborhoods, and we're really looking forward to that as well. And I think that just about sums it up as far as what to expect from us here at Yins Are Good. So without further ado, let's get to it, Pittsburgh.
This is Steve. I live on the South Side. Over 30 years ago, an old friend who knew I was hurting for summer work because I was a high school teacher then, making next to nothing and looking to supplement my earnings over the summer break, called me and asked me if I would come in and help move some furniture into an office that was setting up. He apologized for offering such menial labor, but I was glad he called, needed the cash, and enthusiastically said sure. Turned out the office setting up was for the movie Silence of the Lambs. And that 2-day job turned into weeks of guarding sets, working as a set production assistant, and many other day-playing gigs. I did anything I could. And that job turned into a 30-year career in film, something I'd always wanted to do, but never thought I could break into. So thanks very much, Andy.
My name is Nancy. I'm in the Dormont South Hills of Pittsburgh. The first time I met my husband's family was a Thanksgiving dinner gathering at his mom's house. A pretty impressive gathering where the men and the ladies and the kids all did the cooking and the setting up. Homemade everything. Breads, wedding soup, pasta and sauce, pastries, plus all the traditional foods. Tables were set up end to end to accommodate more than 20 of us, and it was a wonderful time. The next day, one of my husband's brothers called, and the purpose of his call was to ask whether I had enjoyed my time with the family. Not to say how they liked me or if I measured up, but to ask if I had had a nice time. And from that day forward, I understood the grace and the value of seeing life from someone else's point of view.
And our last story for today actually came to us via email. So I'm going to read it on her behalf. This came to us from Carol, who lives in Edgewood. In 2011, my younger brother was involved in a serious car accident. I arrived at the hospital a few hours ahead of my then partner, now wife, who was working that day. The hospital, one of the city's top-rated trauma facilities, was Catholic. I grew up Catholic, but after coming out as a lesbian, I felt so discouraged by the church's homophobia that I joined a more accepting Protestant congregation. That afternoon at the hospital, as our family gathered and grieved and waited for more information about my brother's prognosis, I wasn't thinking much about the hospital's religious affiliation. When my partner arrived, I met her in the lobby and guided her through the labyrinth of hallways to the ICU waiting area. Then, as we prepared to enter the room, an elderly priest, the hospital chaplain, came up to us in the hallway. This chaplain had stopped by earlier in the day to pray with my mother, and he recognized me. "Is this your sister?" he asked me, referring to my partner. I felt my shoulders stiffen, anticipating whatever judgmental nonsense this ancient cleric was going to start spewing the minute I answered his question. But I was 46 years old and way past the point of denying who I was, even if being honest was going to result in an uncomfortable conversation. "No," I answered, voice even, gaze steady. "This is my partner." Without missing a beat, the priest smiled and extended his hand. "Hello," he greeted my partner. "How long have you two been together?" 11 years, I said. "Well, congratulations." I could barely get over my shock. We made pleasant small talk with him for a few minutes before my partner and I joined the rest of the family. It's been several years since that encounter with the old priest, whose name I never learned. But it's as vivid to me today as it was when it happened. I try to summon it whenever I'm tempted to judge someone, jump to conclusions, or assume the worst. And remember that people are capable of incredible generosity and compassion, and that we're all more than the labels and institutions that describe us. Thank you so much, Steve and Nancy and Carol, for sharing your stories with us. They're heartening and uplifting. And I think it's awesome that Yins are open enough to be aware of and appreciate how impactful these moments were for you. And it also got me thinking, how not only do our actions affect others, of course, but they may do so in ways we've never even thought of, or most likely will never even know about. And I do have to say, when Nancy's story and talking about the big family meal, I have to say that definitely struck a chord with me. Each of my parents were one of 6 kids, so I have extended family that just goes for days, and that image of the tables kind of, stacked against each other, and everybody kind of huddling around them to fit. It definitely have those memories, especially if you were seated maybe on the side where the wall was. You basically got back there and then you didn't move till the meal was over, pretty much. Didn't matter what you needed. You were there till the end of that meal. Some of you out there may connect with that kind of story as well. And also thank you, of course, to Andy and to Nancy's in-laws, and to the elderly priest whose name Carol never got. Yins are good. And that little jingle means it's time for Name That Neighborhood. That's right. It is our mini quiz show segment, if you will, regarding neighborhoods in and around the Burgh. Now, we are not able to offer cash nor prizes, not at this point anyway, but it is our quiz show segment nonetheless. So let's get to it. Name That Neighborhood does require a special guest, and so please allow me to introduce him to you now. We are very lucky to have in our midst, although I'm not sure he really had a choice because he's my husband, Don DiGiulio, Don, welcome.
Hi, thank you. It's great to be here.
It is great to have you. Okay, so here's the deal. I have in front of me 4 facts about different neighborhoods in Pittsburgh, and the answer to each of these will be either the South Side, Dormont, or Edgewood. Now, astute listeners will note that these are the neighborhoods from which Steve, Nancy, and Carol, our storytellers from today, all hail respectively. That's pretty much it. Do you have any questions for me?
I do not.
Okay. Now, Don, you are a Pittsburgh native as well, correct?
I am.
And where are you from?
McKees Rocks, Pennsylvania.
McKees Rocks. Nice. So, do you need to prep it all mentally, or you just want to jump into this?
I would love to jump into this.
Excellent. Let's do it. In this neighborhood, you will find a historic B&B and wedding venue, which was once a stop on the Underground Railroad.
I'm gonna say the South Side.
Yes, indeed. You are correct. The South Side. So this is the Morning Glory Inn, which is on Sarah Street. Are you familiar?
I'm familiar with the street.
Good. That's good. And so a little bit of information. So yes, this was for enslaved peoples who were seeking freedom. They climbed through a trap door of a horse-drawn carriage and into a manhole below. And the manhole opened up into a room in the basement of the safe house. And a brick tunnel with a curved ceiling led to the basement's main room. Amazing. And in Pittsburgh, we actually have several stops that were part of the Underground Railroad. Excellent. 1 for 1. Let's keep this party rolling. This neighborhood is home to a shopping center that is located on the former site of the Union Switch and Signal Factory, which essentially was a railroad business focusing on railroad safety in particular.
I'm gonna have to go with Edgewood on this one.
You would be correct, sir. Edgewood is correct. So, this Union Switch and Signal Factory was founded by the brilliant George Westinghouse. You may have heard of him.
I've heard of him.
Great. Yeah. And it was founded in 1881 and was in operation for almost just about 106 years on that site until it was closed down in 1986. It's on South Braddock Avenue, and the company is still around today, but it is known as Ansaldo STS. 2 for 2 to Julio.
I try.
Great. Number 3. The first Kaufman's department store was located in this neighborhood, opening its doors in 1871.
I'm gonna go back to the South Side on this one.
You would be correct to go back to the South Side.
OMG.
Well done, it is true. It was located at 1916 East Carson Street. And it was there until 1877, so not too long. But then, of course, it was then that Kaufman's moved downtown. Wow. 3 for 3. Can he do it? 4th and final fact. All but 2 of the side streets in this neighborhood are designated as avenues. Every side street has avenue at the end.
All right. Well, given the answers of the first 3 questions, I'm going to go with the Dormont for this one, so as not to have a neighborhood feel left out.
You are correct, sir. It is Dormont. It is Dormont. So the exceptions, right, all but 2 of the streets, are Memorial Drive and Park Boulevard. Those are the only 2.
Crazy.
It is crazy. Don DiGiulio, 4 for 4, 100%. Thank you for joining us. All right, the first Name That Neighborhood segment is officially on the books. And that segment will grow and evolve in future episodes. Speaking of those future episodes, there won't be any unless we hear from you. No pressure or anything. But no, if you do want to share a story with us, just a reminder, go ahead and you can give us a call at 1-833-399-GOOD or send us an email at yinzaregood@gmail.com. We really would love to hear from you. And I actually would like to share a story with Yinz. This actually happened very recently in May of this year. So my best friend from growing up, Trisha, we've known each other since first, second grade. And so, yes, imagine that, Tressa and Trisha. Please imagine our parents trying to say our names, especially when we did something wrong or we're getting in trouble. Tressa, yeah, so you can imagine that. But anyway, so Trisha's mom passed away in December of last year, so of 2019. Just a fantastic woman. I could do a whole episode on her. But unfortunately, she passed away in December, and Trisha's dad is still with us. He's 85 years old. And he had been living in, a retirement home, independent living. They had been together. And Trisha now lives on the West Coast. Her brother lives in Chicago. And they realized that Dad needed to be closer to at least, to one of them. So they made the decision that he was going to move out to the West Coast to be near Trisha and her family. And so her parents were always very active in their church. This is up in the North Hills for, since the early 80s. Very active is an understatement, but we're such a part of that community. And so when they found out when he was going to be moving, of course, they put together a send-off. And of course, we are, as we're at a time of quarantine, and this was in like the middle of May. So they put together a parade of cars that lined up at the retirement home. And he sat outside, and Trisha and her brother were there with him. And I got to tell you, the cars all got together, in the parking lot, and then just started in this huge line. And it took more than 20 minutes for this parade to pass him by. So you think about how many cars that is? I mean, at least 20, 25 minutes. And I was standing just across from them watching, and it was one of the most beautiful things I can say I've ever experienced in my life. It was, people were cheering for him and just saying, we love you, good luck, we'll miss you. We had people standing up out of the sunroof in their car. They made signs, we love you, all these things written so he could, read them as well as hear them, and just car after car, and telling quick stories on their way by, right? Inside jokes on the way by. And he sat there and greeted everybody, had a, quick conversation with everybody. But it was so beautiful and really such a testament to the power of love, the power of community. And all of these friends of his, this community, how grateful they were to him for all of the years that they had spent together. And of course, there's a bittersweet angle to it because he's 85 years old and he's moving to the West Coast. And, for decades, they had seen him at least once a week, if not more, usually more. And this was a send-off. But it really was one of the most beautiful things. And as far as why it changed me, or how I consider it to have changed me, was I, if I can say it this way, is I just felt an overwhelming wave of love and what is possible when you take the time and appreciate the people who have meant so much to you, who have done so much for you, and making sure that you let them know that while you can. And make sure they know how much they are loved and appreciated, while you're still able to do that. And it was just such a beautiful half hour that I certainly will never forget. We are just about ready to wrap things up for today. Just a couple of things I wanted to let you know. Our plan is to release a new episode every 2 weeks, so be sure to subscribe to this podcast so you'll know exactly when our next episode is available. And we're also working on a website, and we'll let you know as soon as that is up and running. Thank you so much for joining us for this, our inaugural episode of Yins Are Good. We hope that you'll continue with us on our journey of good. I am your host, Tressa Glover, and until next time, Pittsburgh, be safe, be kind, be good. A special thank you to Mike Rubino for designing our logo, and to our Name That Neighborhood special guest, Don DiGiulio.